than the LTC GMO22. But I have an issue with Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 with just an immense amount of flex. You can basically barely apply any pressure to this mouse, and it just feels like you're getting a lot of creaking, a lot of flex over Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 going side to side, and it's very noticeable in game and actually very distracting. If it wasn't for that issue, the performance of the mouse is not that bad. The overall shape is not that bad. But when you compare it to what it's copying, the Ninjutsu Sora V2, it's just not something that I would pick over the Sora because the Sora is lighter. The clicks feel better. And overall performance is just not anything that would make me say, get the AJ159 over the Ninjutsu Sora. So now when we get to company's flagship mice, I've got a lot of mice here on the table, and I do want to save time for the OGM Pro Wireless V2 from YZAL, because YZAL is another brand who is, I think, making strides in the right direction in terms of these mice that are coming from that region of the world that just feel better in general. But when we talk about flagship mice, we're talking about the G Pro Superlight 2. We're talking about some of the premium versions of the mice from Pulsar. We've got the Cherry Extra 5 flagships in the new mice that released. And when we are comparing some of these brands and Razer, Logitech to Cherry and Fantech, it's just unquestionably that there is a more premium feel in the Pulsar X2H ES, the Logitech G Pro Superlight 2, and Razer's products than the Cherry mice and the Fantech Helios 2. The Fantech Helios 2 Pro is supposed to be a upgraded version, a more premium version, or I guess a revised version of the Helios that's supposed to be a whole lot better. Here, I do think that the shape of the mouse is still fantastic. The performance here on 4K, I had no issues with other than some RF signal issues that I just don't feel on any of these other mice. My mouse cursor just at random intervals in game feeling like it's stuttering. Again, not issues I have on any of these other flagship mice. Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, I do think that they have made massive improvements here with minor side flex on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2. The scroll wheel feels good. But another issue here that's just unavoidable that I have to bring up is Mouse 3, which is when you're pushing the scroll wheel inward, is so lightly able to be pressed that I just think it's something that was overlooked in the build quality phase. For some reason, it is very easy to actuate Mouse 3. I found it to be actuating in-game at many different intervals in-game when I didn't want it to be actuating, and that did cause me some issues. Overall, I think they were trying to make a really nice coating here, and to me it just begins to feel too marshmallowy. It begins to feel too swampy, too slimy, and it's not a coating that even remotely competes with something like what I see on the YZAL OGM Pro Wireless V2 and on Razer's mice, or even something like the Beast X, the G Pro, or the Pulsar X2H ES. So, you know, the Helios 2, good shape. Questionable about the performance here because of the RF signal issues I had, and the scroll wheel issue for me is a deal breaker. I wouldn't pick up the mouse again because of the actual accidental misclicks there on the Fantech Helios 2. And that could have just been something limited to my copy, but it's something that was happening to me so tremendously frequently in-game, I would just not be able to use it. When we get to Cherry's Extra 5 mice, the flagship mice come in at around $140, and that does come with the 8K dongle. I thought the performance on these mice, and again, mine came in a box full of water damage, but sometimes the white version that I have here, the Ergo Cherry Extra 5 mouse, was having some signal issues. I think the dongle probably got damaged because my black copy works absolutely fine. I didn't have any RF signal issues whatsoever or any cutouts, stutters, etc. Both of these mice actually feel good. The shapes are refreshing. The shapes are new. And I do think a lot of people would probably like these. But again, the coating begins to feel just not premium like Razer's products or the G Pro Superlight 2, Pulsar, the WL mice, and it becomes something that just feels tremendously cheap, particularly at $140. I do like the shapes of these mice. I think the weight is right where it needs to be. I think, again, the performance is good. So if you wanted to try something new, I still think that you all could potentially check out the Cherry Extrafy mice. It might be worth a try. But there's just something about the coating and the overall plasticky feel that just doesn't feel as premium as the other mice that are still remaining on the mouse pad. So we come to a time now where we have some off brands like WL Mice that are pumping out these tremendously good mice with good internals, good performance, lightweight, and some people might absolutely hate holes, and that would just basically take these mice out of the equation. But I would have to say that WL Mouse, the B-Stacks, both the medium and the large, are a mouse that makes it to my top 3 in terms of mice on the market right now. I've got a lot of new mice that came from Razer. I purchased these on my own. Razer does not send these to me. I've got the Viper V3 Pro, and I have the new Death Adder Hyperspeed. The Death Adder Hyperspeed is one of the most surprising releases of the year. The Death Adder Hyperspeed has become a mouse that is seeing the most playtime on my desk right now. I think the size and the shape are perfect to have enough of an ergonomic feel, enough of a palm grip on it to have a lot of control for an ergonomic mouse, but then a size that is good enough to whip it around and get a lot of engagement with your fingertips. So it's a very versatile, very good ergonomic mouse that feels so much better than all of those other mice that I just spoke about. So for me, it's very hard to recommend other things when you have something like the Death Adder Hyperspeed, the B-Stacks, the Viper V3, and I want to actually talk about that. The Viper V3 at $149 or $150 in comparison to the Cherry Extrafy symmetrical mouse that is $140. I just don't know how I can recommend the Cherry mouse when the Viper feels that much more premium. To me, it's just more of a compelling purchase to get the Death Adder Hyperspeed or the Viper V3. Now, I get to Pulsar's mice, and I know a lot of people have struggled with build quality issues or sticky clicks, but the Pulsar X2H ES, as well as the ES series in general, feels exceptionally premium. Pulsar has a great coating on their mice. The weight and the weight balance, even though it is on the heavier side, coming in between 60 and 65 grams in their ES line, the metal scroll wheel looks absolutely stunning compared to most scroll wheels on the market. They are coming out with a lot of colors, a lot of collabs, and I think the variation is something that I'd like to see from a big mouse brand. I think Pulsar has paved their way to be able to be referred to as a big mouse brand. The X2H and the X2H Mini are some of my favorite shapes right now to use. The Shinobu looks absolutely stunning. It is held up perfectly. I have had no build quality concerns or issues, as well as my X2H ES Founders Edition in green looks absolutely stunning, plays absolutely fantastically. I think these are some of the best mice on the market and deserve a spot on what is now the most played spots on my desk. The Death Adder Hyperspeed, the X2H ES, one of the B-Stack sizes. Right now, I'm probably still finding myself utilizing the large a little bit more. And then the G Pro Superlight 2. It is just a mouse that has received an immense amount of hate because, well, Logitech isn't really doing anything. It's hard to miss the fact that Logitech isn't doing anything on the market right now. And the G Pro Superlight 2 is just a shape that works so well in terms of consistency, but it's a very bland, a very boring shape, and a lot of people don't like those heavier clicks in the G Pro Superlight 2. But at the end of the day, the G Pro Superlight 2 performance just shines so much past a lot of those other mice that I have used on the budget end that it would be very hard for me to recommend a different mouse to a pro player with hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line to recommend something other than these 4 mice out of my entire mouse collection right now. Of course, you could interchange the Viper V3 with the Death Adder Hyperspeed, but really, these 4 mice just feel so much better than everything else on the table right now. Again, you could interchange the smaller version of the B-Stacks with the larger, the smaller version of the X2H with the X2H ES, or the Viper V3 with the Death Adder. Now, these are probably my top 4 mice right now that I find myself using all the time. You guys did see the little unboxing I had for the Ponage Stormbreaker. The Ponage Stormbreaker has now seen a ton of revisions and a lot of new changes that I think are absolutely fantastic. The BLG copy looks stunning. The skates out of the box are actually good, and it's one of the, well, it is the only mouse on the table that actually has a movable sensor system. And it's nice to see a little bit of innovation like that. The side buttons now are actually no longer stiff on my BLG copy. Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 feel really good, never get any switch grind, and the magnesium build here is exceptionally strong. I don't have any concerns or any issues whatsoever. It is a mouse that feels very good. My only qualm with it is the paint job is kind of makes it feel like a glossy mouse. I live in a very humid climate, so glossy mice just don't work for me. But if I could throw some grips on this and be happy with covering up the beautiful build, the Ponage Stormbreaker, now upgraded with 4K, feels like a really, really good mouse. But I find myself still gravitating to the Death Adder Hyperspeed. And then we've come to the OGM Pro Wireless V2. This was actually one of the most surprising mice that I've tried recently. I think Wisal has done a tremendous job overall with the coating of this mouse. The weight of the mouse is down to 49 grams, and it is on the larger size for an ergonomic mouse in terms of its width. At 49 grams, with a 3950 sensor, it is a solid performing mouse. It comes with good skates out of the box, and overall the weight balance here is just tremendous. It feels amazing. But again, we start getting into the build quality. I can squeeze the mouse and actuate Mouse 4 and Mouse 5 with not a whole lot of pressure behind that squeeze. Not anything I've ever actuated in-game, but if somebody really has a tight grip in-game when they're hunkering down, let's say an attack shooter, or something when they're spraying in Apex, I could maybe see you actuating Mouse 4 and Mouse 5, and that's kind of a concern. Now, that's not my biggest concern with the Wisal. The clicks here on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, you start getting to different areas of Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, and the click system here, when I get close to the top of Mouse 1, when I'm clicking here, I cannot get any actuation of the switch. Likewise, when I am clicking on Mouse 2, when I get to the entirety of this area here, I am getting no actuation of the switch. And it just feels as though that plastic is moving and I'm just not getting any anything from the switch at all. To me, that's just a very bad design. And I don't know if it's like that on every copy, but my hands are very large. My fingertips rest in the region of no actuation. And for that reason, in general, I think it's just a huge miss on the overall build structure of the mouse. If I had a copy, though, that did have a Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 that didn't have that issue, I don't think the side flex with actuation of Mouse 4 and Mouse 5 would bother me at all. I think what Wisal has done with the improvements in general from the last iteration to this iteration, this coating is phenomenal. Again, it feels like a smooth touch Death Adder or the Viper V3 in black. They've nailed that coating. It feels exceptional. And when I am hitting the switches in an area that I can actually get actuation, Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 just don't feel good. And then that just leaves me with, in my lineup, my flagship mice from some of the larger companies, WL Mouse, of course, being one of the newer ones. But it's hard for me to recommend anything other than some of Pulsar's top tiers in their lineup. The new Razer stuff like the Viper V3 and the Hyperspeed, offering some of the best mice on the market in terms of symmetrical as well as ergo, and the WL mice just feeling so good, and the G Pro Superlight that might bore people, and I get it, but it's still one of the best and one of the most consistent feeling mice on the market, and something that, if you're looking for the best performance, it certainly does not leave much to be desired. So right now, these are the top recommendations that I have. The other stuff, I think it's fun to try things, but again, right now, it's just hard for me to recommend a lot of other things separate and apart from what you guys see on the mousepad right now. So those are my thoughts, guys. If anybody has some recommendations for some of the budget mice, I would love to get a budget mouse that I can really say I would maybe pick this over some of the flagship stuff from some of these other companies like Razer, Logitech, WL Mouse, and Pulsar. If anybody has recommendations, I am happy to still continue to explore to try to knock off some of these things and point people to a more affordable yet still just as good in terms of feel and performance. I would love to be able to do that. But right now, this is where I am. So that's it for this one, guys. I hope it helped. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap for the week. In this one, we'll be talking about a strange lawsuit against Valve. Also, Microsoft's being charged with breaching antitrust rules. Microsoft automatically uploading your files to the internet. They're different stories. 4070 Ti Supers, potentially it looks like getting the AD102 die, and a couple others like NVIDIA's market cap reduction of $500 billion in a couple days. And they're still like the top 3 or 4 companies in the world by market cap. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly's Aeronaut and Hydronaut thermal pastes. Aeronaut is Thermal Grizzly's entry-level thermal solution, marketed as resistant to curing and for long-term endurance. Hydronaut is Thermal Grizzly's next step up, targeted for overclocking and higher performance applications. We've used Hydronaut on a lot of our systems internally over the years. You can learn more at the link in the description below. All right, first one is Valve being sued for 656 million British pounds, or about 832 million US dollars. This is in the UK, obviously, and it's based on claims that Valve is, quote, rigging the market and taking advantage of UK gamers, end quote. This collective action claim was put forth by a digital rights campaigner named Vicky Shotbolt, and it is being brought forth by the legal firm Milberg London LLP. The lawsuit claims that Valve has been, quote, shutting out its competition, and the BBC reports that the lawsuit, quote, says Valve forces game publishers to sign up to so-called price parity obligations, preventing titles from being sold at cheaper prices on rival platforms. Shotbolt claims that this allowed Valve to charge an excessive commission of up to 30%. Also a quote, according to Shotbolt and the law firm, Valve has been in breach of UK competition law for over 6 years. With the lawsuit, she aims, quote, to stop this unlawful conduct and help people get back what they are owed, end quote. Now, at the core of this, from what we understand, it looks like this is based on maybe just an incorrect understanding of how things work on Steam. So, this comes down to the price floor for games that are sold off-platform. It's kind of what the claim is about, saying that Valve is setting the price limit and is also taking what they call an excessive commission. We'll talk about that in a second. Following the lawsuit, game developer Jason Thor Hall and streamer better known as Pirate Software replied and came to Valve's sort of defense, stating, quote, Steam's pricing restriction is only for Steam key pricing off-platform, meaning you cannot use Steam as a distribution hub and sell Steam keys off-platform for cheaper. This prevents Valve from getting ripped off and is absolutely fine. They do not dictate the lowest price your game can be sold for unless you are using Steam keys, end quote. The Steam keys is a free Valve solution. It's a service that Valve provides to Steam developers as single-use codes that they can give people like beta testers or press. As for the 30% commission, Hall, aka Pirate Software, stated, quote, the Steam 30% cut is not actually 30%. It's 30% for all sales made on the Steam platform. If you sell Steam keys, Valve takes a 0% cut of that transaction. They also don't charge for generating Steam keys. The claim that the 30% is egregious is also a subjective opinion, as many developers, myself included, find that the value brought by Steam is well worth it. Whether or not 30% is too high is up for debate, as stated by Pirate Software. We're not game developers, but as YouTubers, the most I can say is, wow, 30% would be awesome. That would leave 70% for the one actually like making the thing. That'd be pretty cool. So I'm just saying, like, we'd be okay with it. But, you know, it's a different industry. There's different costs involved, whatever. Anyway, aside from the Epic Games Store, which collects 12% cut and uses that as a major marketing point, The majority of competitors we're aware of charge 30%. To the best of our understanding, this includes GOG, the Microsoft Store, the PlayStation Store, Xbox Game Store, Nintendo eShop, Apple's App Store, and famously Apple's App Store actually, and Google's Play Store. Some developers have special deals with the store host. That's kind of a different thing, though. That's arranged privately. Overall, it seems like this lawsuit might be founded on maybe an inadequate understanding of how the feature functions. All right, next one. In other legal news, the European Commission has charged Microsoft with breaching EU antitrust rules for bundling Microsoft Teams with its Office 365 and Microsoft 365 subscription. The European Commission raised concerns that this maneuver stifles competition, writing in the press release, quote, "The Commission is concerned that since at least April 2019, Microsoft has been tying Teams with its core software as a service productivity applications, thereby restricting competition on the market for communication and collaboration products and defending its market position in productivity software and its suite-centric model from competing suppliers of individual software. In particular, the Commission is concerned that Microsoft may have granted Teams a distribution advantage by not giving customers the choice whether or not to acquire access to Teams when they subscribe to their software as a service productivity applications. This advantage may have been further exacerbated by interoperability limitations between Teams' competitors and Microsoft's offering. The conduct may have prevented Teams' rivals from competing and in turn innovating to the detriment of customers of the European Economic Area," end quote. In particular, the Commission states that Microsoft's actions infringe on Article 102 of the Treaty of the Functioning European Union, which the Commission says, quote, "prohibits the abuse of a dominant market positions," kind of anti-monopoly stuff. The European Commission began its investigation to Microsoft July 27th, 2023 for this particular issue. That was after receiving a complaint from Microsoft's rival, Slack, and AlphaView GmbH. The EU Executive Vice President in charge of the Commission said that, quote, "We are concerned that Microsoft may be giving its own communication product Teams an undue advantage over competitors." Microsoft, like most of its large competitors, is no stranger to European Union antitrust charges. In 2004, the company was fined 497 million euros and was required to release a version of Windows without Windows Media Player. In 2008, the company was fined 899 million euros for not complying with a 2004 ruling regarding the sharing of information. In 2013, the European Union fined Microsoft 561 million euros for failing to give Windows users a choice of web browsers. But that's enough of Microsoft. So speaking of Microsoft, this time with OneDrive. Following its recent massive controversy around the recall service, which aims to save screenshots regularly of the desktop for future LLM training and other AI use cases, Microsoft is aiming to solidify concerns about its platform and push people away as rapidly as possible by defaulting to automatic uploads of your files to OneDrive. Great. It's opt-out, not opt-in. Before we get into this story, just a public service announcement. So we install Windows without web-connected accounts for every machine in the office. That's test benches and workstations alike. There are a lot of good reasons for this. This is one of them, because if you have no web-connected Microsoft account attached to your OS, then it cannot automatically enable this OneDrive uploading feature, whatever privacy concern, future breach and waiting, whatever you want to call it. If you also want to install Windows with local-only accounts, like we do, we recommend it, you can do so by, when you get to the Windows install prompt, you hit Shift F10 when it starts asking you for an account or to create one. That will pop up command prompt, and then you type in OOBE /bypass NRO. Put that on the screen. OOBE, I think, stands for out-of-box experience, and then the bypass will bypass an account requirement. You'll have to restart. It will remember that when you boot back into the installer, and you can make a local-only account. And if for some reason that doesn't work, you can Google OOBE bypass, and there'll be a million articles about how to do it. So, all right, on to the story. Microsoft's newest change enables opt-outs, meaning on by default, automatic uploads to its OneDrive storage service. Windows will now upload the libraries folders to OneDrive, which includes pictures, documents, videos, and music. This story originally kind of got popular from Reddit posts asking about the behavior. We saw it run on Tom's Hardware and a couple other places. For security reasons, primarily so you don't have backups floating around without your knowledge of it, we'd recommend turning the feature off unless you intend to use it and to keep track of it. Anytime you're using a cloud storage service, whether that's something like Adobe Cloud or Microsoft or whatever it may be, we'd recommend only using those if you're going to keep track of them. Because if you don't, and there's an account breach that you're unaware of, then whatever documents you have there, tax files, whatever it may be, social security number, which you shouldn't really be storing there anyway, but people definitely do it, that obviously becomes a concern. So we just recommend turning it off unless you're going to use it. All right, next one. 4070 Ti Super GPUs coming based on AD102, the die that's used for the RTX 4090. So this is according to leaks by MSI and later Colorful, where future manufacturing runs of the 4070 Ti Super GPUs will apparently be based on AD102, and these will be cut-down variants of the die that is used for the RTX 4090, which is kind of crazy because that is a gigantic die. Typically, manufacturers like NVIDIA, AMD, Intel will use their defect silicon and then fuse off non-defective functionality that is congruent with the higher-end product that maybe wasn't a defect in manufacturing. They'll fuse it off, knock it down to a lower SKU, and that allows the manufacturer to reclaim the die if it wouldn't pass qualification for the full fat die 4090. MSI revealed to benchlife.info that its upcoming 4070 Ti Super Ventus 3X Black OC, which probably should get some kind of award for amount of words in a product title, it'll use a GPU that's codenamed AD102-175. The RTX 4090, on the other hand, debuted with AD102-300 chips, and a story on video cards claims that it will be AD102-225, not AD102-175. In either case, the part that's important is the move to AD102. The RTX 4070 Ti Super GPUs typically use a cut-down AD103 chip, which is what RTX 4080s, the originals, are based on. In terms of specs, MSI's upcoming card doesn't deviate from the FE versions much. The core specs are all identical, so that's memory, the core count, all that stuff. Looks like NVIDIA is just rescuing defects in the process and shipping them as 4070 Ti Supers. We see this all the time, but one of the most noteworthy historical rescues was the 2060 KO. The 2060 KO was really interesting and is a mistake that NVIDIA will probably never make again. So the KO was EVGA's specific SKU, but that version of the die was also sold through MSI cards. The difference was on the 2060 KO EVGA model, they guaranteed that specific cut-down version of the other die. And so what happened was, and we have a video on it, the 2060 KO in some workstation applications was massively better at those tasks than the original 2060, and that wasn't supposed to happen. So that was a cut-down version of another die. It was supposed to have features disabled, and it was just supposed to be a 2060 in every capacity, but it wasn't. In gaming, it was about the same, to the best of my memory anyway. It was just those production applications from a mistake in NVIDIA's fusing process. Anyway, AD102 dies are significantly larger than their AD103 equivalents, so there's really no reason they'd use AD102 unless it's a downbin defect. This die size is approximately 608 millimeters squared for AD102, with AD103 at a significantly smaller area of 378.6. That's millimeters squared again. Now, this die size difference is meaningful. Large die areas nearer the reticle limit, like AD102, are more expensive to produce. This is partly due to actual material, machine time, but also partly due to the lower yields. Saving defects to convert them into lower spec parts is a way to recoup the cost. Now, MSI leaking to Benchlife isn't the only company to push the 4070 Ti Super cards based on AD102. According to Video Cards, Colorful is also releasing a SKU based off of AD102. The publication notes that it features a 310 watt TDP that would make it 15 watts higher than MSI's variant, but this is a choice by the card maker, not by NVIDIA. One last NVIDIA story here, I think, unless more come through before the end of the episode and we have to shove them in. But NVIDIA recently saw a $500 billion reduction in its market cap. Let's just, you hear $500 billion, it's $500 billion, just to put it into perspective, it's like orders of magnitude more than a fathomable amount of money. You hear that kind of reduction in market capitalization, and you might think that the stock chart would look like the end times. Like it's the apocalypse, everything's over, it's doomed, but this is what it actually looked like. It's a blip. It's hardly noticeable. This drop happened over the course of 3 days, making it the largest short-time reduction in company value in stock market history. Not only would this spell the end for most companies, it is in fact 5 times what Dr. Evil held the world for ransom for in 1997.
We hold the world ransom for $100 billion.
Or 2.54 times if adjusted for inflation, and probably Dr. Evil would need to do that just to cover his costs, obviously. Now, this is what $500 billion drop in market cap looks like. Just again, we'll put on the screen. The drop follows NVIDIA's meteoric rise to briefly become the world's most valuable company by market capitalization, which it held on June 18th with a market cap of $3.335 trillion. For some fun but mostly meaningless numbers, let's just do some math just to see what it looks like. So if you take that $3.335 trillion and you divide it by the head count, 29,600 employees, then the per value market cap share, if you want to, it doesn't work that way, but if you want to do it that way, that would be $113 million per employee. Or if you divided the annual revenue of $79.774 billion from April of this year reporting by the employee headcount, that average would dwindle down to a paltry $2.7 million per employee per year. It's just terrible. Where's the value in that? All right, next one. Hori is making Steam controllers and not those Steam controllers. The company's variant is more similar to the Steam Deck's controls in that it has the Steam Deck's menu buttons. It also has touch sensors on top of the stick that allow users to activate gyro control. Unlike the Steam Deck and the Steam controller, remember those? It lacks trackpad and rumble support. And while it has buttons on the back of the Steam controller, there are only 2 compared to the Deck's 4. Instead, it moves 2 of those back buttons to the front, one under the D-pad and the other under the right control stick. In terms of connectivity, it supports wireless over Bluetooth and wired connection via USB-C, and the Steam controller from Hori will come in at 4 colors, black, white, neon yellow, and violet, and will retail for 7,890 Japanese yen, which amounts to about $50 US. Unfortunately, the Steam controllers are only targeting a Japan release for now. More frighteningly, though, it's set to launch on October 31st. Up next, previously, Microsoft revealed that it was working on a game streaming hardware device back in 2021, which the company has since shelved, but it's kind of re-emerged here. That device carries the codename Project Keystone, and aside from snippets of it sitting on a desk behind Xbox head Phil Spencer, we never really got a look at it. More recently, though, Windows Central was able to unearth some of the Keystone patent filings, which gives some more illustrations of the cloud device. Visually, Keystone looks a bit like a small record player. It features a square design with a circle on top and bottom that are reminiscent of the Xbox Series S's black circle. The front of the console appears to have an Xbox logo-shaped power button and a USB Type-A port. The drawing of the back of the console depicts what looks like an Ethernet port, HDMI, and power connectors alongside exhaust vents. The right side features what looks to be a controller pairing button, and finally the bottom of the console also looks like it has numerous circular vents. The documentation shows that the patent was filed on June 1st, 2022, and the date of the patent was established on December 26th, 2023. There's still a lot we don't know about the device, including its specs or OS. Spencer spoke to The Verge and mentioned back in November of 2022 that the device was being pushed back because of its price. According to the publication, Microsoft was originally targeting a $99 to $129 price point for the device. And speaking with Wall Street Journal back in October 22, Spencer didn't rule out the possibility of an Xbox streaming device and said, quote, "Will we do a streaming device at some point? I suspect we will, but I think it's years away." And those were kind of their last real comments on any of this, a couple years old now. From a functionality standpoint, Keystone would have occupied a similar space to Google's now defunct Stadia platform. It would be a competitor to NVIDIA's solution as well, formerly called Grid and now called GeForce Now, all of which are designed to make sure you own absolutely nothing and barely even the hardware that you're using to stream the games to. But unlike Google and Stadia, though, Microsoft remained in the game streaming space with its Xbox Cloud Gaming Service, which bundles with the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription. So Keystone ultimately didn't make it to market. There have been rumors about handheld development as well. Those haven't been publicly shown in any official capacity yet, but Microsoft is definitely playing around with different things. The concern we always have with the game streaming stuff is that it is the clear making sure all of the games are purely licenses. And that's kind of where it's going already, even with Steam. However, the big difference with game streaming is you now start to strip away the hardware ownership as well. So it's not just the software, but it's also we'll provide all the hardware in our remote data centers. You just pay for that indefinitely, which is a concerning feature for a lot of reasons. We've already gone that direction with productivity software like the Adobe Suite, and it's really not. It's not where I want to go with hardware. Arctic has released a new NVMe SSD cooler, so this isn't something we're going to go too in detail with, but it's called the M2 Pro. We're talking about it because we saw Thermaltake's M.2 SSD coolers at Computex, where they used really tiny 20mm fans to basically compete in the same market. So Arctic says that the cooler is compatible with the PS5, meaning that it'll fit in that small chamber. It also makes some interesting claims for the performance. But as far as how it assembles, they say it uses a click-in mechanism for the SSD and the heatsink, and then it also has 2 of Arctic's TP3 thermal pads that allow it to contact on both sides of the SSD, which is particularly useful if it's a dual-sided SSD. Now, as far as their performance, Arctic claims that it measured a Samsung 990 Pro hitting a peak temperature during a write test of 90 degrees Celsius, and that was without a cooler, and then it claims that it went down to 55 degrees Celsius with the M2 Pro. We are currently way over capacity on testing, and we have way too many things in to do reviews on, so we don't plan to validate that claim, but that is what the state is. All right, Minis Forum is releasing a new mini PC called the UM890 Pro, which will be powered by AMD's refreshed Zen 4 Hawk Point processor. Specifically, it will use the Ryzen 9 8945HS CPU, which is an 8-core 16-thread part. Confusingly, Minis Forum has conflicting information here, so they have this image on the page for the product that says it's Zen 3 architecture. Higher up on the page, they say Zen 4 architecture, and then AMD officially has the correct specs, of course, for the 8945HS, which is in fact Zen 4. Looks like a copy-paste error. They forgot to update the image text from a previous generation or something. In terms of ports, the box seemingly does a good job of cramming a bunch of hardware into a tiny space. It includes an audio jack as well, 2 USB 4 ports, 4 USB 3.2, DisplayPort 1.4, HDMI 2.1, Oculink, and 2 Ethernet ports. The UM890 Pro starts as a bare bones kit, $480. You'd bring your own storage and RAM for that, or it's $650 for the full SKU with 32 gigs of memory and a 1 terabyte SSD. Minis Forum has been overall recovering pretty well. So when we first worked with the company, when it was still I don't know how new it was, but it was at least new to us at the time with the liquid metal solution years ago. We did a review on that. The experience was that we felt they had very misleading marketing. The main selling point and feature wasn't even in the device, and that was it looked bad. I mean, it just really didn't look good for Minis Forum. They have recovered in a massive way, and it looks like they're going the right direction. All right, Valve releases Steam game recording in beta. This is kind of similar in ways to Shadowplay or AMD Relive, where it is hardware agnostic here. It works on the Steam Deck as well, but it tries to complete some of the same functions that those do. Steam game recording can function in background recording mode, which captures continuously but can overwrite, and the other is active recording on key press. Steam game recording also features lightweight editing tools. It allows you to basically clip footage, save out an MP4, and then also has sharing functionality, and it has timeline event markers. These are kind of cool because if any of you have ever used one of the older model GoPros especially, there's always the problem where you collect a ton of footage and then it's kind of hard to scrub through and find the interesting points. So these markers are supposed to solve that, where they will, on a predefined game event program, which are mostly unknown right now and are set as we understand it by developers, markers will drop, which will make it easier for players to find those events in the game. So Valve says that players can also drop their own markers. This would be useful to cut down useless capture, like say when you're camping waiting for something to happen. In terms of performance overhead, Valve says that it tries to, quote, minimize CPU usage of video encoding by using the dedicated video encoding hardware of your AMD or NVIDIA GPUs, and, quote, it's unclear if Intel is at a disadvantage. Its ARC GPUs have a robust media engine, but Valve wrote, quote, when run on systems without those graphics cards, seemingly referencing the prior AMD NVIDIA statement, the system CPU is used to create video recordings, which may cause a noticeable performance impact on those systems. In other Steam-related news, according to PC Games N, approximately $19 billion has been spent on unplayed Steam games. So there's a lot calculations in this, but let's just go through it for interest. The publication explained that it came to this conclusion by, quote, out of all the registered Steam accounts in the world, only 10%, or about 73 million in Steam ID Finder's database, are public. Based on data from those accounts, we calculate that collectively there's around $1.9 billion worth of games that have been purchased and then never played even a single time. Multiply that by 10 to roughly account for all Steam profiles that are not public, and you arrive at $19 billion. A couple things here. First of all, extrapolating, multiplying it by 10 is a big extrapolation, but they're hoping that it's kind of linear. And then additionally, it's not clear if all of these games were calculated at MSRP or at their sales price. There's also a lot of assumption where there have been many times where Steam will distribute free games as part of a bundle, or the developer will do so rather. And either way, assuming the $19 billion number is right, $19 billion for unplayed games, to put that into terms that are actually fathomable, that would be almost the value of 17 NVIDIA employees. And that quip was the only reason that story was in this news episode. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net, or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly. And we'll see you all next time. Work. YouTube's changed its interface. Are we live? It says you are live. Okay. All right, let me know if you can see and hear everything. YouTube completely overhauled its streaming interface, and it's unintelligible. So I think it's working. But yeah, we're going to be overclocking the R3 3100 today. And the goal is to see if we can go past 5 gigahertz. It should be, okay, it's live. It's actually, is it playing on your screen? Yeah. Okay, cool. I need to, okay, there. Does it show volume as muted on yours? Just so it doesn't feed back into itself. On the YouTube player window? I can't tell. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna be overclocking the 3100, and we're using liquid nitrogen to do it. The goal is to just use this one because it's cheap, and that'll make it more fun. So we could do the 3300X, but honestly, I really just want to do the 3100 because it's $100. Still says reading super chats. Yes, that is because that's what we're going to do. So you can send the first one if you want. But I think I saw Roman in here a second ago. Why not 3300X? Because I want to do the 3100 because it's the cheapest, like 4-core 8-thread CPU, and the 1600AF's not really available. So should be fun. I'm going to kind of wait for chat to fill in. Let me tweet out that we are live now, and we'll get going with it. The stream today, we're going to be using an MSI X570 Godlike for the motherboard, which we've had good luck with. So one of the problems with liquid nitrogen work is all the insulation that's needed. And it's easier these days to just use Vaseline all over the board. That does mean that I try to stick to like basically one board for all of the XOC stuff, because it just gets so coated that it's gross to work with for normal reviews, and we don't really want to mix and match if we can avoid it. So yeah, this is the Godlike. We've used it in the past for streams. Let's see, we are live with the 3100 XOC stream. Okay. Cool, so that's out there. And we got a couple super chats I need to find. So is that the button now? Oh, it's telling me I can send a super chat. No, that's not what I'm looking for. All right, well, we'll do this the old-fashioned way. So we got one from Tom Kabulik, who said, first, $5, thank you very much. And then there was another one, I think, from Eskimonster 20DKK. Goats bless you. Okay, well, thank you. I'm sure that's meaningful somewhere. Okay, so yeah, 3100. We already reviewed it. It did pretty well in the review, and we. Oh, nice! I found the new Super Chats interface, and we obviously already showed that the 3300X versus the 3100. 3300X has an advantage because the CCXs are collapsed into one, and it's 4+0 config instead of 2+2, which is what you have on the 3100 we're using today. But I guess the fun of this will be once the 3100 is at or past 5 gigahertz, what happens? How does it score? And I've got some tables we can look at for the 7700K at 5.1 and at stock. So we'll do some comparisons as to how this 4-core 8-thread part compares to the 7700 4-core 8-thread part when they're both at about the same frequency of 5.1 gigahertz. Then for the super chats, I'm going to be reading them on about a probably 30 to 60 minute delay, depending on how busy it gets as we go through. So let's see, Joe's in here too, it looks like. Oh, Joe's not verified. Joe, you need to get verified, which I think means you need more subscribers, so post more videos. But Joe, aka Bearded Hardware's in here. Roman is going to be sad to see that I'm going to use some Kingpin X paste instead of the, would the CCX difference make a difference in overclocking? Yes, we showed that in yesterday's review of the 3300X. You can watch that for the clock-to-clock differences. So, yeah, I'm going to be using the KPX paste because Roman needs to send me Cryonaut or I need to buy some more. And he keeps telling me he'll send me some at every convention once or twice a year so that I don't buy any. So we're going to use this today. And I'm just going to do a full coverage on it. The goal is just to cover the whole thing and try and get the spread even. And that is the 3100. Okay, cool. Just making sure it's the right chip. So yeah, X570 godlike for the board. We had the best luck with this with memory overclocking back when it was new, when this X570 board was new. And we've generally liked working with the BIOS. MSI has gotten relatively clean with their BIOS implementation. They're still not always great. Like some stuff's kind of confusing to work with, but overall this one's been one of the easier ones to work with. The X570 Master we've used in the past as well. That's a gigabyte board, and that one has also done well for us. But right now we have our non-Vaseline ones in use, and the Vaseline one I'm not sure if it boots. So for the fans, I've got some kind of EK Vardar fan right here, and that's just going to be for getting the liquid nitrogen vapor, I guess the nitrogen gas, away from the system so we don't have condensation buildup. And I'm going to cover everything in shop towel to also deal with that. Okay. It needs a little more over here, and then I'm just going to move the LN2 pot around on it once we get it on there to spread everything out. So the card is going to be the Gigabyte 2080 Ti Extreme, but I'm probably not going to do any 3D benchmarks. I don't think there's any on here, so I'll probably just be doing the just Cinebench, and we're going to use R15 because it's faster, because it's on an 8-thread chip. That's going to take plenty long to run, especially if we're running it all day. And I have more data on it, so I can compare to everything else that we've run through R15.
better, and to a certain point they also sharpen your reactions. And don't get me wrong, mouse control is super important, but that alone isn't what makes really good aim. Learning how to strafe properly and perfecting that synergy between your movement inputs and your mouse, that's something that no aim trainer can really teach you, yet it's hugely important into how clean your aim looks and how many shots you hit. But it's prediction that is probably the most underrated aspect of really good aim, and to be honest, it's just never really talked about. This is stuff like learning enemy strafe patterns, falling speed, if they're running towards cover for example. I'd also put crosshair placement in this category as well, which as we know is hugely important. These are things that you can only really get better at by just simply playing more and more. Think about it for a second. If you know which direction the target is most likely going to move next, aiming becomes so much easier. Honestly, this is probably at least half of what makes really good aim. It's also one of the reasons that if you've ever played an aim trainer, you'll just naturally get better at a specific scenario as you learn the patterns, the movement speed, and stuff like that. Your mouse control might not even improve, but after you've played it a few times, your prediction is improving and you're learning what the target is going to do next. You no longer have to rely on your raw reaction skill. This is also why you'll see players who have amazing tracking and crosshair placement without ever really touching an aim trainer. I mean, sure, their mouse control is pretty damn good, But because they've spent thousands and thousands of hours playing that individual game, they've seen it all, and their prediction is incredibly good. They know what the opponent is most likely going to do next, they know where to place their crosshair, and they have that calmness and confidence which can only be built up over thousands and thousands of hours of game time. This is something that an aim trainer can unfortunately never teach you. And that's not even considering the other things that aim trainers don't teach you but are super critical in winning 1v1s. These include recoil control, bullet spread, damage fall off. They also don't teach you positioning or map knowledge or things like character abilities, cooldown management, the list goes on and on. There are so many things that you miss out on training and improving when you're just doing isolated aim training. However, I do still think that aim trainers are actually incredibly useful. Firstly for those who are quite a low rank and probably could be working on their mouse control, I don't think that there's anything better than an aim trainer to actually do that. You'll be able to find a sensitivity that's better suited towards you, you'll be able to smooth out all of those jitters and work on being more efficient and accurate, and potentially, also develop faster reactions since you're always in this mode of expecting target movement. Ironically, it's this group of people who would kind of benefit the most from using an aim trainer, and really developing that mouse control could take them up a couple notches, but it's also the group of people who don't really care about gaming enough to download an aim trainer to begin with. But yeah, if you're quite a low rank and you genuinely want to improve, aim training can be a really good tool. I think they're also really good for those who play, pretty intermittently. So for those who take a few days off and then play a few days in a row, aim training can give you a kind of accelerated warm-up that you just wouldn't get from playing the game itself, especially if you're playing primarily battle royale titles where you might only have a handful of gunfights every few minutes. Compare that to an aim trainer where you can simulate hundreds of targets in the same amount of time. If however you're already playing at a pretty decent skill level and you play pretty much every day, aim training is honestly probably a waste of time. I would say if you can score the most popular Kovac scenarios in the top 5 to 10%, chasing anything higher than that really isn't productive when it comes to ranking up in whatever game you play. Now, top 5%, that sounds pretty high, but again, I'd consider that the point where you're not really getting any further benefit and carryover to actual games. So even if you can get, say, top 15%, that's not bad at all. And that's kind of the point I'm at now. After 300 hours in Kovacs, I have a bunch of scores in that kind of top 1% range, and the continued carryover that I'm getting for actual games feels less and less, and at the moment, it feels basically next to nothing. It's nice to boot up every now and then, chill to some music and hit some targets, especially if I have a new mouse or mouse pad to test out, but beyond that, I'm not really expecting any benefit from it at all. I do distinctly remember though when I first started playing aim trainers a few years back, it literally felt like a cheat code. This was before aim training became popular, and back then I definitely felt a really steep improvement in my aiming ability and how my reflexes felt. I then descended into this kind of aim training borderline obsession phase where I would try and beat a new high score every single day, and I do a minimum of a 30-minute warm-up before playing any actual game. That's something that I just don't recommend. I'll also mention that for warming up before some games, you're much better off playing some deathmatch or warm-up scenarios for that specific game. Overwatch 2, for example, usually has a handful of specific custom maps in rotation if you want some more specific practice, and this is also probably the best type of aim training that you could be doing, since you're also training your movement and prediction. The very popular Widow headshot server, for example, there's basically no better warm-up and training if that's the character that you're playing and you want to hit more headshots. Play a few rounds of this, then jump into an actual match. It's pretty insane how dialed in and automatic your aim feels. Same for Valorant and CS, which have their very popular deathmatch servers. In my opinion, these are leaps and bounds beyond what any aim trainer can teach you. As I mentioned though, aim training can be beneficial for those who aren't playing every day or those who aren't playing at a high rank. And so for those people, here are a few tips. The first thing is of course to spend some time dialing in your settings and using the actual FOV and sensitivity that you play with in game, and also to play around with a visual theme that works for you. I'd also recommend a more neutral target color as opposed to a bright yellow or red target, which is usually set at default. I feel like this is more representative of what you'll actually see in game, and it should keep your eyes feeling a bit more fresh. And another important tip is to play the scenarios that you're actually really bad at. I mean, this is kind of the point of training in the first place for any sport. Find what your weaknesses are and then work on those. Personally, I've found the really hard scenarios, the ones that kind of tilt me, to be the ones that give me the most rapid progress and improvement. Stuff with really fast moving targets, smaller targets. My accuracy in these scenarios might be less than 50%, which is honestly pretty bad, but because they're so challenging, they really force 100% of your attention and focus. So if you're spending like an hour playing Tile Frenzy or some slow tracking scenarios, you're simply wasting your time. I know they're cool like flex scenarios, it's cool to get a really high score, but the carryover and kind of translation to actual games here is very small for anyone past a beginner. Back to our basketball analogy in the beginning, that would be like standing right in front of the basketball hoop on a stepladder. So here are a few scenarios in Kovacs. In my opinion, these are leaps and bounds beyond what any aim trainer can teach you. As I mentioned though, aim training can be beneficial for those who aren't playing every day or those who aren't playing at a high rank. And so for those people, here are a few tips. The first thing is of course to spend some time dialing in your settings and using the actual FOV and sensitivity that you play with in game, and also to play around with a visual theme that works for you. I'd also recommend a more neutral target color as opposed to a bright yellow or red target, which is usually set at default. I feel like this is more representative of what you'll actually see in game, and it should keep your eyes feeling a bit more fresh. And another important tip is to play the scenarios that you're actually really bad at. I mean, this is kind of the point of training in the first place for any sport. Find what your weaknesses are and then work on those. Personally, I've found the really hard scenarios, the ones that kind of tilt me, to be the ones that give me the most rapid progress and improvement. Stuff with really fast moving targets, smaller targets. My accuracy in these scenarios might be less than 50%, which is honestly pretty bad, but because they're so challenging, they really force 100% of your attention and focus. So if you're spending like an hour playing Tile Frenzy or some slow tracking scenarios, you're simply wasting your time. I know they're cool like flex scenarios, it's cool to get a really high score, but the carryover and kind of translation to actual games here is very small for anyone past a beginner. Back to our basketball analogy in the beginning, that would be like standing right in front of the basketball hoop on a stepladder. So here are a few scenarios in Kovacs that I'd recommend and the ones that I've seen the most improvement from. Top row here would be pretty comfortable for most people of different skill levels, with the bottom row being a bit more humbling. But yeah, very basic, popular scenarios here. Overall, should make your aiming pretty well rounded and also sharpen those reflexes a bit too. So do aim trainers actually work? You know, I've spoken to a lot of people about aim training. Some people think they don't work at all, they're kind of pointless. Other people think they're the ticket to becoming a human aimbot. As usual, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think a lot of people will see some rapid early improvement from first booting up an aim training and kind of working on those weaknesses, but also understand that the carryover is quite limiting because you're not working on all aspects of your aim, and that after a certain skill level, you'd just be better off playing the game that you want to get better at. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you found this one helpful or interesting. As always, a huge thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.
Look, it doesn't matter which shooter you play. There's one thing you're just gonna have to know how to do. Aim.
Fucking ubehageligt, hvad der spiller, når jeg har sådan propper i ørerne, så jeg ikke hører en skid.
Det er lige meget, du skal bare skyde dem jo.
Whether you're looking to become the next device, trying to take Sentinels down a notch, or ushering in an era of utility-based trick-shotting, there's just
I have 2,000 hours in aim trainers. The other day I noticed the top 2 videos in aim training were people with only 1,000 hours talking about their nice little 1,000 hours. With my 2,000 hours, I can make a video twice as good as these videos combined. More seriously though, Steam hours include AFK, so I don't know exactly how many hours I actually have. It's probably a good bit less than 2,000. But I thought I'd tell you guys all the mistakes I've done wrong over the past 3 years, so you guys don't make the same mistakes I did. I started aim training a couple months after I started PC gaming, meaning I was probably in the bottom 1% of aim trainer players. Not only was I brand new, but I've never been good at things that require coordination. In high school I was a 3-season distance runner, haven't touched a sport with a ball since 4th grade, etc. As a result of this, my first 3 months, I spent aim training just to get scores good enough to hit the lowest rank on the worst benchmark scenarios. Most great aim trainer players I know or know of started aim training after they were good at games and had some significant aim skill to bring in. For example, Matty Overwatch is the best Kovacs player. He said when he started he used to be so bad that some of his scores were even below the 90th percentile. As in he was so bad, sometimes he was barely or not even in the top 10% of people. This means that the first month or two of most good players' improvement is just them learning to apply the skill they already had and get it into Kovacs. And they start with pretty high scores. I had no skill, so I had to learn how to apply it as I got it. This puts me in a unique position that most people can't say they're in. I spent my first 2 months on aim training on aim labs, basically wasting all my time. I don't even count that as my first 2 months of aim training anymore. Nowadays, aim labs is a very good aim trainer and a great rival to Kovacs. Back then, it was garbage. Grid shot, 6-shot, and a bunch of other massive target, low quality, easy scenarios were the only things that seemed available. To top it all off, I had a massive